Welcome to this episode of PoliTalks from IAPAC, the Indian American Political Action Committee of Greater Houston. I'm Ramesh Anand, President of IAPAC. Today we chat with Carol McCutcheon. She is the council member of the city of Sugarland in Texas, part of Greater Houston. And we have our board members, Shweta Arora and Sanjay, former president of IAPAC too, who will be having a discussion with her. What endeared to me about Carol, a couple of things besides the amazing work that she is doing in the city of Sugarland, is the fact that she is a fellow biker and loves animals. Two things that are very close to me for sure. Again, welcoming Carol McCutcheon and with Shweta hitting the ground running in a discussion with her.
Good morning, Carol. Thank you so much. We're so happy to have you here. I wanted to ask you, what drew you to politics to begin with? Like, what engaged you and the reason why you joined politics?
Well, thank you very much for having me today. I'm really excited to be here and get to have this conversation. And before I answer your question, I do want to give a quick tribute to one of my former constituents, and that is Sonal Buchar. I just love Sonal, and her contributions to our city and county were legendary. And I was really excited to find out recently that an elementary school in Riverstone is being named after her. And I was happy to be able to play a role in that with letter writing last year and this year, along with, I'm sure, probably a couple hundred other people in making that happen. And that is just a very fitting way to remember Sonal's amazing legacy here in our community.
Absolutely.
But anyway, what drew me to politics? Well, I always vote. Many people have made a lot of sacrifices to our country so that we can vote. And so I always have voted, and I feel like it's very important to make an informed consent. You just don't want to go and check off boxes on the list. It's really important to research the candidates, and if they're local, have a chance to meet with them and talk with them to find out more about them. And 4 years ago, the seat became open for the district council seat, and I had been involved in the community for about the past 28 years. And I just thought, well, it's time for me to, I guess, take my service to a higher level, from serving the community as a volunteer to running for elected office. So I put my name in the hat and I worked really, really hard, and I got elected. And I had very big shoes to fill when I got elected, because my predecessor was Harish Jaju. So I said, work hard to live up to his standards.
Absolutely, absolutely. What do you find as the most interesting part about being in politics? You've been there 4 years now, so you've had some experience.
Well, one thing, I have had the chance to meet so many people, and I love meeting people. And I've had the chance just to meet people that I wouldn't normally have had the opportunity to meet. And I've met people from so many different backgrounds and got to experience so many different cultures. And I just really love that. And the one thing that I particularly like about being a city council member is that it is a nonpartisan office. So I'm not identified with any particular political party. I just stand before the electorate as an individual. And then that way, myself and each other nonpartisan candidate are just so that we stand on our own merits and achievements and a vision for a better future. And so I like that. And the other thing about being in politics is that there are always many, many challenges. So there's never a dull moment, and you never know what's going to happen. So you need to be, sometimes creative and resilient, and it's always a lot of challenges to come up to fill. So I really enjoy it.
That's a nice segue. Councilmember, thank you again for joining IPAC on PoliTalks. You talked about your 28 years of civic life, bringing it to holding elective office, and what the interesting parts have been, and admittedly some challenges. What's been the most challenging part of being a council member?
The most challenging part to me is to set the budget and the tax rate to fund it. There are unlimited amounts of money that you could spend, and there's all these ideas of these great projects that we would love to do. And now our infrastructure is starting to age, and so in addition to everything else that we like to do to keep our everything maintained in really pristine condition, you've got roads and sidewalks and all this other infrastructures needing repair. And so there's so many projects you want to build, but everything costs money. So, and you always have to balance, the amount of money you want to spend with keeping the tax rate as low as possible, because we also want to keep it affordable, to live here, particularly for our senior citizens. So that is, I feel that's the very most challenging part, is trying to determine, how much money we're going to spend every year and what the tax rate needs to be to fund that. And but I am proud of the fact that Sugarland has the second lowest tax rate in the state of Texas for cities over 60,000 people.
That's awesome. It's striking that balance is always the challenge, right? It's there's somebody that said, don't tell me what your priorities are, show me your budget and I will tell you what your priorities are. So speaking of those, what are the initiatives or priorities that you are most passionate about?
I have three things. One is public safety. I think it's really important for our citizens to be safe. Everyone wants to feel like they're safe in their homes, that they can go to a place of worship, or their children can be at school, in a safe environment, and people are feel free to be out, walking at night or riding their bikes or doing stuff. And so I want it to be just a very, very safe place here. But then also public safety, it also includes, fire and the ambulance services. And so we want those to be able to have a really fast response time, because if your house catches on fire, you only have several minutes before the whole thing can burn down. So we need to make sure we have quick response times for our firefighters, and also as well as our ambulances for people who might need medical services. So public safety is my number one priority. And then number two is traffic mobility. Fort Bend County has been growing very rapidly. So we have a lot more traffic coming through, particularly on Highway 6 and Highway 90. And so we need to, we can widen our roads, but we can only widen our roads so much. So we also need to do some traffic technology with the signal lights. And so we are doing state-of-the-art timing of our traffic lights, and changing the ability to change the traffic patterns and stuff like this, which can coordinate and synchronize everything so they can actually result in a quicker commute time for our residents. And one project that I'm helping work on right now is the widening of University Boulevard near Highway 59 between Westcott and Lexington, and then potentially adding an additional turn lane there. That the city is working along with TxDOT on that project, and we're hoping to get some matching funds from TxDOT, and we already have some matching funds from Fort Bend County to do this. So that is something that's going to be a benefit, in particular for the residents of Avalon at Telfair. Oh, and then the third one, the third one is drainage. During Hurricane Harvey, we had about 250 homes flood. And then we had what we call the May 7th, 2019 rain event, where we had an unbelievable amount of rain in just a few hours. And people were stranded, and also some more homes flooded then. And unfortunately, there were even a few homes that flooded both times. They had just finished repairing their homes from Harvey, and then they got hit by the May 19 rain event. So the city got very busy in looking at doing some modeling work to see okay, why are we having these issues? And are these issues city issues, or are these lid issues, or both? And so the city did a really great job on sorting all of that out. And we put together a prioritized list of drainage projects that we needed for our city to try to prevent this from happening again. And it was about, the drainage part alone was about $50 million. And we put a bond election together in November 2019, and we got taxpayer voter approval to start and proceed with those drainage projects. Now, of course, the taxpayers, they approved a tax rate increase to go along with approving the bond projects. But because of COVID, we made a decision to stretch them out over a little bit longer time frame than what we had earlier had envisioned, because we were very cognizant of wanting to keep the tax rate as low as possible, because, people maybe were out of work, or businesses had reduced, volumes because of COVID. So, like I said, we're stretching that out over a little bit longer time frame than what we'd originally planned, just because we didn't want to have, that tax rate increase that had been approved by the voters right at this time. So drainage is very important, because that's we need our residents to be able to, move around the city, and we need to have, be able to have emergency response services get to people in an emergency. And so we don't want people's homes to flood. So that's a very important project that I've been working on.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you. You kind of answered my question, but I'll ask it anyway. My follow-up question, you segued into it very well. I wanted to know, what do you find, or what do you think is the single most urgent issue that needs to be addressed in the city of Sugarland?
Yes. Well, like I said, the drainage to me is very important, and that's been a really a priority for me from a time standpoint, because you don't know, are we going to have a big hurricane coming up this year, right, or is it going to be several years down the road? We don't know. So I would like to go ahead and, since we don't know, go ahead and prepare for that now, and get these in places. I mean, drainage projects take a long time to do the design and then the actual construction. So that's why that's a priority for me.
What are you passionate about? So that's what you're passionate about. That's what you want to work on.
Plus, I'm an engineer, so so
that's right.
Engineers like drainage projects, but it goes with the engineering territory, Sanjay.
So it's definitely been something that has helped you in your process in being a part of Sugarland City Councilman, your background in engineering.
Yes, I've got a BS and a master's in chemical engineering, and I also have an MBA in finance and management. And I worked as a reservoir engineer in the oil business for many years. And in my role, I would draw people together from drilling engineering, facilities engineering, natural gas marketing, crude oil marketing, and of course the geologists, the geophysicists, and many people. I would put them together, and we worked together as a collaborative team, because I said my expertise was reservoir engineering, that I needed to rely on the expertise of the geologists and geophysicists to give me the maps and some other parameters to work off of. And we worked together as a multidisciplinary team. And then I would pull all of this information together, and then I would run chance-weighted economics on a development plan or for an exploratory well. And it was very, very complex, as I was working offshore Gulf of Mexico for a number of years. And so this collaborative effort is those skills that I had for all those years is something that I have brought with me to council, because we have, many different areas that the city works on. Besides, we've got, as I talked about earlier, we've got fire, police, EMS, we have water, we have wastewater. I know Sanjay was involved in that in our master plans for that a number of years back. We also have, roads, sidewalks, street lights, and we have our parks, right-of-way maintenance. And the city has just a large breadth of activities that we encompass. And these activities affect your day-to-day life. And, as council members, we are essentially, we're supposed to be part-time, but it's really a full-time volunteer roles. And there's 800 city employees, and, we can't know everything. But so we have to really, rely on the input of a lot of different people in order to really represent the city like this. And you really have to draw the information together. And then you also need to get input from constituents on key issues. And I always like to hear from a broad base of my constituency to know how they feel about a particular issue, like, for example, the tax rate or some budgetary issues. So I feel like the role that I had in the oil and gas business for those decades really prepared me well for my position on city council.
Now, speaking of being well prepared, nothing prepared any of us on the planet to deal with COVID over the last 12 to 14 months. And, you started off honoring the legacy of Sonal Butcher and speaking about Harish Jaju's contributions to the city of Sugarland. We all know Sugarland has a tremendous Asian American population. And unfortunately, we've seen over the last few months several Asian American hate events across the country. Thankfully, it's not hit us in our backyards. The most recent shooting in Indiana, there were four members of four Indian Americans, Sikh, of the Sikh community that were killed. Would you speak to what we all should be doing to protect our friends and neighbors? And I'll have a follow-up question specific to the Indian American community after that.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing, Sugarland is made up with, we have a very, very diverse community here. I've been told that we're the most diverse city and the most diverse county in the entire United States. And we are really fortunate because we all just live and work together in harmony with each other, and we're really blessed by that. And the different cultures all come together, and weave just a really beautiful tapestry, in my opinion. And it just really enriches living here in Sugarland. And of course, there's always the possibility for someone from outside to come into Sugarland. It's not like we have a wall around the city or anything like that, but that's one thing why it's so important for us to continue to have a strong, police presence. We have a very good, well-trained police staff. We hire the very best people. We carefully train them and make sure that they have the best, equipment and resources available so that they, first of all, can keep themselves safe, but then in turn can keep our community safe and protect us. And we have a very good response times. And there's also license plate reading cameras throughout the city, which can tag license plates of like problem cars coming into the city. And our police department has a very collaborative relationship with the police departments in the other cities in Fort Bend County, and also have a good relationship with Houston and Harris County as well. So the different police departments and sheriff's departments are, like I said, working together and communicating with each other whenever there's a problem, so that we can be as safe as possible. And I just say that it's always good just to, if you see something that looks out of ordinary, it just always just call the non-emergency police dispatch number, which is 281-275-2020, and just say, hey, there's a situation at my neighbor's house. They're out of town and there's an unusual car there, or maybe they are there and there's something going on. Could you just drive by and take a look and check it out? And they're more than happy to do that. Obviously, now if it's a possible emergency, then you call 911. But if it's just something that seems a little bit out of place, then that's when it's good to call that non-emergency police dispatch number and say, hey, can you just have a police officer, just sort of go over there and check it out. But I think one of the most important things that we can do is know your neighbors, know who they are, know what cars they drive, and just sort of know a little bit about, their schedule and stuff. So then that way, you'll know if something doesn't look right, if something doesn't seem right, because, the police can't be everywhere at every minute. And of course, if you call them, they'll get there as quickly as they can, but it could still take 3 or 4 minutes maybe to get there. So the best thing to do is, get to know your neighbors, know what their cars they have, just know about the family, and then that way you'll know if something looks amiss. And then that way we look after each other. And I think that's a really good way to do it.
It's, if you see something, say something or do something.
Yeah.
I love your description of the rich tapestry that you have in Sugarland. A good portion of the tapestry is of Indian origin. These are Indian Americans, and given PoliTalks is an Indian American Political Action Committee conversation, your thoughts on how you have engaged Indian Americans and how you plan to engage Indian Americans as you continue your tenure on City Council?
Okay. Well, I have been to the BAPS temple several times, and I have been to some different, Diwali and other celebrations. And one thing with the Indian community, as well as my other communities, I always like to, put an acknowledgement on my Facebook page when there's a certain, a major holiday or festival or something like that coming up. And I know a lot of people in the Indian community in my district. And in fact, the main reason I ran is, as a person in the Indian community came to me and said, Carol, you need to run for council. And I'm like, me? I've just been serving the community. That's something different. And then a second person came to me in the Indian community and said, Carol, you need to run. And after the two people in the Indian community that were unrelated to each other said, Carol, you need to run, that was really, I really started thinking hard about it and thinking about all the different, the 24 years at that time of service that I had done and all my different skills. And, I thought, you know what, I should run. And I did. So I know a lot of different people in the Indian community, and I call some of them from time to time and say, hey, what's your opinion on this? But then more importantly, they have my phone number, And if there's an issue or they have a question about something, they're calling me. They are calling me and say, hey, what's going on with this? Or let me tell you my opinion on that. So I've got a really great relationship with the Indian community that's not only in my district, but in the city. And people know that, I work equally for everybody, regardless of race, religion, political party, or any other identifying factor. I am here to serve, and I'm just here to work together with my fellow colleagues on council, to make Sugarland just a really wonderful, it already is a great place, but to keep it a really great place to live and work, and then just to continue to help make us more, resilient in the future.
Great. And thank you, Carol. And with that, one last question for you. I want to ask you, so what is your ideal vision for Sugarland, for the next 4 or 5 years? What would you see as you want to see accomplished in Sugarland? And from your perspective, what do you want to make sure that you contribute as Sugarland City Councilwoman?
Yes. Okay. That's a great question. And going back to what I said before, I want to get those drainage projects because this next term is a 3-year term. So I want to get as much done as possible. I'd like to get them completed, but it may take 4 years to get all that done. But at least have them designed and constructed as much as possible. These core drainage projects, and then also we are working on the expansion of our animal shelter. Our animal shelter is fairly small. And then after we annexed Greatwood in new territory, that increased our population by about 35% overnight. So our animal shelter is bursting at the seams. So we have plans in place to have a new animal shelter. And so I'd like to see that happen. And then again, we're working on the rehab of our roads. And another thing I'm always pushing for is more funding on sidewalk rehabilitation, because that's sort of stretched out right now. So I want to keep on pushing for more budget money to go towards our sidewalks. And there's some fun things that are going on in our parks area, but it's a little bit, I guess, preliminary to mention about that. But those are the main things, is just make sure that our infrastructure that's starting to age gets some well-needed maintenance. And I know it's not, that's not real sexy to talk about, road and sidewalk, and getting a new roof on the police department building and stuff like that. But it is important to maintain our infrastructure. And that's something when budget money gets a little bit tight, it's easy to put off the rehabilitation of roads and stuff like that. But I feel it's important to stay on top of all that. So we're not driving around with a bunch of potholes or anything.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Carol.
Oh, I see Ramesh has popped in.
Yes,
Hello.
I had to. Carol, I had promised I'll stay out and not be seen because you've got better looking company. But you won my vote if I was in Sugarland.
Oh, thank you.
I, besides being the president of IAPAC, I rescue animals. I've rescued over 500 dogs, my family.
Thank you.
And almost every week, 10 days, I rescue a dog. And believe me when I say this, Carol, sorry, Shweta and Sanjay, I have to plug this in. You can ask any animal rescuer in Greater Houston. Sugarland has by far one of the best animal shelters in Greater Houston. You guys do an amazing job with rescued animals. In fact, I tell people that this is one shelter which is closest to being a no-kill shelter you can find in Greater Houston. The fact that you mentioned you want to do more has literally won my heart. You got a phenomenal supporter in you from me, I promise you that. And I will make it a point to tell all my rescue friends, anytime Carol runs for election, please remember she loves animals. That's a point I will make for sure. That's it. I'm out.
Oh, thank you so much, Ramesh. I appreciate that so much. And I do love animals. We have 2 dogs ourselves that we walk every morning and evening on some long walks along around the lake here, and some shorter walks through the neighborhood. So we love animals, and we love taking them to the Sugarland Palm Springs Dog Park too. And we have a lot of animal lovers here. And we had expanded our Citizens and Animal Advisory Board from 5 people to 13 people recently, so we can have greater citizen engagement on there to help us with our expansion of our new animal shelter. So
that's wonderful. And like Ramesh said, you've kind of won our hearts, the animal lovers out there, by saying that, because I'm another one of them.
Oh, God. But yeah, the vet who's in charge of our citizens committee, he said that we're like the gold standard for animal shelters. So I'm very happy about that. Of course, there's always room for improvement, but and we always try to keep improving. But I'm very pleased with our animal shelter.
That's wonderful.
Well, Council Member, thank you very much for joining us and for your candid thoughts on a whole host of topics. And I'm glad to see that, as IAPAC is an organization that is dedicated to the civic and political engagement of the Indian American community, and to hear that you are having constant conversations with them, and it's actually a 2-way engagement. They're calling you and you're calling them. That is music to our ears. If there's anything IAPAC can do, as you look at many of the initiatives that you're passionate about, we are a phone call away, as you know. And we want to wish you the very best, and love your passion for civic service. And as you try to make Sugarland an even better place for your citizens to work, live, and play. And that brings us to the end of another edition of PoliTalks. Until next time.